No one expected Suga's step out of the black car tonight to be the most shocking signal from the hidden movements of the Korean music industry beneath the calm surface of his military service schedule. Because without any flashy security and wearing nothing but a plain white mask and an oversized jacket that clearly hung loose on his lean frame, Suga emerged with a pace that didn't draw suspicion but carried tension in every stride, supported by a pair of bright red shoes far too striking for a casual meeting. And that's where the mystery began. Because when someone of Suga's level of fame chooses footwear like that on a night like this, it's not about fashion, it's a code. And only 5 seconds after his foot touched the pavement, a whisper was heard from a staff member who exited the vehicle with him. "Don't take too long, he's already waiting inside." And without turning or responding, Suga gave a small nod, lifted his black cap slightly to hear more clearly, then walked briskly toward a building completely covered in black film glass. Inconspicuous from the outside but with an aura that made two passers-by freeze and look at each other with jaws dropped. Was that Suga? Isn't he supposed to be in the military base? One whispered, but their voices were cut off by the roar of another vehicle that stopped just 2 meters behind Suga's, and out came 2 men dressed in entirely neutral tones, carrying a guitar case and a large tablet, with ID cards hanging from their chests labeled Guest, Soloist, Producer, Meet. And that was the moment everything shifted from wild guesses to structured questions, because one of the 2 men was recognized by a photographer, sitting not far from the entrance. "Dude, that's the guy who produced that viral solo debut last time, right?" he muttered while starting to snap secret photos, but his gaze was not fixed on them. It stayed locked on the interior of the building because Suga hadn't reappeared and all the lights inside were off except for one dimly lit corner, just enough to illuminate a recording desk or a monitoring station. And the atmosphere shifted into something strange when 3 additional security guards arrived from the back of the building without saying a word, only signaling with their hands for everyone nearby to clear the main sidewalk, causing the street to empty in mere minutes. Then a low sound faintly resembling instrumental music leaked from inside, too soft to identify its type, and a few seconds later a voice, not Suga's, was heard from within. "Are you sure we're recording this now? This isn't just a song. This is the foundation for opening everything later." And another voice responded with a tone that demanded attention. "That's why I came myself. I didn't send anyone else. I want to know straight from you. Suga, are you ready?" But there was no immediate reply, only the sound of a chair shifting, followed by a deep breath unmistakably from Suga himself, and then a single sentence that made everyone in the room fall silent. "I'm not ready, but I can't wait any longer." And the air in that small room thickened instantly as if every molecule paused to register the weight of Suga's words, because what he just said wasn't just a response to a question, it was a release, it was a signal of something deeper brewing for far too long beneath the surface of his stoic expressions and tightly timed schedules. And the man across from him, the producer who had worked with soloists whose careers transformed overnight, leaned forward but didn't speak yet. He just let the silence stretch, acknowledging that this wasn't a moment to fill with chatter, but to respect with stillness. And then finally he said in a voice lowered with something between concern and admiration, "Then let's not waste this night, just talk, play something, anything." And with that he gestured to the tablet in front of him where several rough demos were listed, none of them labeled, and Suga hesitated only briefly before taking off his jacket with one hand still gripping the tablet as if he were holding both the past and the future in one grip, and he scrolled for a few seconds before pressing play on an unnamed track, and the first few notes were unlike anything anyone would expect from him. It was raw, stripped of polish, and full of uneven breathing and distant ambient noise, like it had been recorded in a moment of emotional collapse, not musical intent. And when the intro ended, Suga quietly muttered, "I recorded that at 3 a.m. in the barracks after everyone else was asleep. I didn't even plan to keep it." And the producer didn't look surprised. In fact, he nodded slowly and said, "That's exactly why it matters." And then looked Suga straight in the eye. "If we're doing this, this is the direction we're going. Full honesty, no masking, no safe zones." And for a moment Suga seemed to drift, staring at a corner of the ceiling before whispering, "You sure they're ready for this?" And before the producer could respond, a knock echoed on the studio door, and both of them looked toward it with a shared glance that carried more anxiety than curiosity, and a staff voice came through the crack of the door. "There's someone asking to see you. He says he's the executive from the US label you used to talk to before enlistment." And Suga's face changed slightly, not shocked but not entirely calm either, as he stood up without a word, walked to the door, opened it halfway, and stood in silence for a beat too long, and then quietly said, "I didn't think you'd actually show up." And the man at the door, someone none of the local staff seemed to recognize, only gave a half smile and replied, "I wasn't sure either until I heard that track floating around back channels last week. You weren't supposed to leak it, were you?" And Suga didn't deny it. He only stepped aside and let the man in and closed the door behind him, turning back toward the room now with 3 people standing inside and 1,000 threads of tension hanging in the air, and the producer gave a low chuckle. "Well, I guess this just became bigger than both of us, huh?" And the man from the US label set down a small black folder on the edge of the desk. "Read this later, but first let me hear you say it out loud just once. Are you coming back or not?" And the room froze again, because this wasn't just a question, it was an invitation and a challenge. And as Suga looked at both of them with eyes that suddenly seemed heavier than when he walked in, he sat down, leaned forward, pressed stop on the demo and said, "I'm not coming back, I'm starting over," and nobody said a word after that, because nothing else needed to be said. But outside the building, a van that had been parked across the street all this time suddenly started and quietly drove away, with someone inside holding a zoom lens camera and a device still recording audio from the frequency tapped moments earlier. And the person smiled wide to themselves and whispered, "This is it, this is the story." But what that unknown observer didn't know, and what even Suga himself hadn't fully realized, was that the sentence he had just spoken wasn't the end of a decision, but the ignition of a ripple that would stretch far beyond this quiet studio space. Because as the man from the US label silently tapped the black folder twice with his fingers before sliding it closer towards Suga's side of the table, the producer leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing just slightly, as if calculating the potential of what had just been declared. And the silence now wasn't one of hesitation, but one of strategy and contained energy, because Suga didn't reach for the folder immediately. Instead, he reached for the same device he had used to record that rough demo and opened his voice memo app, scrolling quickly until he found something marked only with a red dot, no title, no description, and he hit play. And what followed was not music but a conversation, recorded without the other party knowing, and the voice that answered back in that recording was unmistakable. It was a former executive from HYBE saying the words, "We can't risk a solo project now, especially not with the kind of lyrics he's writing." And as the line played again with chilling clarity, "The public wouldn't take his side if they knew what he's been holding back." The producer's jaw tensed, and the US label rep slowly stood up, walking toward the sound source as if trying to confirm what he had just heard. And Suga locked eyes with both of them, finally speaking with a low, controlled tone. "That was recorded before I left. They tried to kill everything before it began, but I saved every file, every voice message, every failed session, and I'm done playing quiet." And no one moved for a moment as the implication of those words settled in, and then the producer leaned forward, elbows on knees, voice sharper now. "Do you want to burn it all or build something new?" And without blinking, Suga replied, "Both," and the man from the label gave a single nod, pulling out a flash drive from his inner coat pocket and placing it on the table next to the black folder. "Then you'll want this. This has the drafts. They rejected the names of the ghostwriters they tried to use in your name, and 2 unreleased tracks that leaked internally and were flagged before anyone outside could hear them." And Suga stared at the flash drive like it was both a gift and a weapon, and then calmly slid it into his bag without a word. And that was the cue, because the producer stood up and clapped his hands once sharply. "We go underground from here. No announcements, no teasers, no leaks, not even to your closest circle. We finish this album in 3 cities, one of them off the radar completely. We drop it with no warning, no label, no backup, just raw content and real sound." And Suga, for the first time that night, allowed a brief crooked smile to form on his face. "Make sure the mics catch everything, including my breaths, including the silence." And the man from the label responded without missing a beat.